One night, I was sleeping in my bedroom when I suddenly heard a wild scream in my ears. It echoed and sounded strange. I jumped out of bed and went to the sitting room to check. Everything was silent. The whole house was quiet. I walked into the kitchen and stood there for a moment, but it was quiet too. I looked out of the window, hoping to see someone outside, but there was no one. I checked the time. It was around 11 p.m. I opened the door and stepped outside. I walked over to the gate and checked it. It was still locked. There was no sign of anyone who could have screamed. I stood there wondering where the scream had come from. I was certain I heard it clearly, and it sounded like a woman's voice. I went back to my room and sat down. A few moments later, I heard the scream again. This time, I realized it was my neighbor. She seemed to be choking in her sleep and screaming at the same time. Before I could leave my house, I heard her whispering prayers. When I finally opened the door, I looked up and saw 3 black owls sitting on her roof. They were large and their eyes were red. They didn't move or fly away. They just sat there, staring at me. I picked up a stone and threw it at them. The stone hit one of them, and all 3 flew away. My neighbor came out that night, wondering what had caused the noise on her zinc roof. I told her about hearing her scream and seeing 3 black owls sitting on her roof. She looked at me, startled, and said she had been having a terrible nightmare. In her dream, 3 old women were chasing her. She ran with all her strength, but the women were faster. They caught up to her and stabbed her repeatedly in the back as she fled. That was when she had screamed. Shaken, she went back inside to continue praying that night. By morning, she woke up with 3 long, straight marks on her back. The marks ran from her neck all the way down to her buttocks. They looked sharp and clean, like they had been made with a razor blade. When she showed me the marks, I leaned in for a closer look. The way the cuts had formed told me they weren't ordinary marks. I recognized them as scratches made by a woman's nails, deep, deliberate, and full of malice. I told her what I had realized. She had been attacked by 3 witches. Those marks on her back were from their claws, and the witches were powerful and full of wicked intent. You need to fight back, I warned her. If you let your guard down, they'll come back, and next time, they might not miss their chance to destroy you. I looked her in the eyes. Whoever attacked you last night doesn't wish you well. They want you dead. While we were talking, I noticed her eyes started blinking rapidly. She rubbed them as if something was irritating her. Why are you blinking so much? I asked. It feels like sand got into my eyes, she replied, rubbing them more furiously. Her eyes suddenly turned red. Concerned, I went to get some water for her to wash her face. After rinsing her eyes, she said she felt some relief and went inside to lie down. Later that afternoon, I saw her again, and both her eyes were swollen. The swelling was unusual, and I knew right away this wasn't normal. It was another attack. Turn around, I told her. Let me see the marks on your back. When she lifted her shirt, I saw the 3 long marks again. This time, yellowish pus was oozing from them. This isn't just a scratch, I said gravely. These marks were poisoned. You've been spiritually poisoned through your skin. She stood up quickly and looked at herself in the mirror. That's when I saw them, over 500 tiny black worms crawling all over her back, feeding on the pus. I gasped and spun her around to look at her back directly. But when I checked, there was nothing there. The worms were visible only in the mirror. A chill ran down my spine. Where did you go to get yourself into this kind of witchcraft trouble? I asked. Did you offend anyone? Did you boast before someone? Or have you met anyone recently that seems suspicious? Because 3 witches are behind this. She paused and thought deeply, searching her memory. Then she looked at me and said, Uncle Greatness, I haven't gone anywhere strange. The only place I visited was the salon yesterday to get my hair done. There were 2 other women getting their hair plaited, along with the one doing mine. That made 3 of them. We all talked about a lot of things. I nodded, sensing there was more to her story. Did you offend them in any way? I asked. No, she replied, but I remember mentioning my boyfriend. I told them how he spends money on me and that he was paying for my hair because he doesn't want me to look bad. As I listened, it became clear to me. She had shared too much and unknowingly stirred jealousy in their hearts by boasting about her boyfriend's generosity. I told her right away, that's where your trouble began. You boasted before those women and revealed something you should have kept to yourself. They have attacked you out of envy. That night, around 1 a.m., I heard her scream again. I was already awake, expecting trouble. I rushed outside and saw the same 3 owls sitting in the exact same spot on her zinc roof. They hadn't moved. This time, I was prepared. I grabbed the stones I had kept by my door for such an occasion. I aimed carefully and threw a stone at one of the owls. The stone struck its head. The bird tumbled to the ground, twitched violently, then went completely stiff. It was dead. My neighbor came out of her house, followed by others from the compound. They all gathered around the dead black owl, staring in disbelief. By morning, when she woke up, I checked her back again. The 3 marks that had been filled with pus were now dried up. The lines had faded significantly, far less visible than the day before. 2 days later, she passed by the salon where she had her hair done. It was closed. Curious, she asked around and was told that the salon owner had fallen sick and died. Like and subscribe.